Esh and Swindon to nothing with the wonders of internet. Ladies and gentlemen, and assembled company, welcome to the World Storytelling Cafe. And it's Monday night, and it is connecting the world by story. And tonight we are, well, if we're hippies, we're going the wonders of nature. But if we're Essex, we're going, ain't nature wonderful? Right. So on that theme, I think the order will be, we'll kick off. And when I was working in prison, people used to say it's a really bad phrase to use. So we'll start with Mr. Shane Ibbs, who I've dragged from the undergrowth, through Hainault Forest, through Epping Forest, to his sort of his abode, with which he approaches civilized society in Chelmsford. And we'll start with Eamon. Not with Eamon, he's not here. We'll start with Shane. Then we'll move up the coast a bit to Norfolk, and then we'll go across to Colin, and we'll see what's happening from there. But that's a plan. And like all plans, there's possibilities in this forest of getting lost and so forth. But for now, could you start guiding us down this leafy footpath, Shane? Not Jane, Shane.
Yes, I can. So obviously I thought, what story shall I tell? And I thought I'd tell one that can work for children or adults, but I see, well, we've only got a few children here at the moment, but hopefully a few more will join us. So I thought I'd tell
it's Monday night, not Friday night, so that's not too important.
Yes, but I think we have, looking at the audience, I think we have got a few children here, John. Yeah, there's a couple nodding, and I know Mike is a self-confessed child, so you like myself. So I thought I'd tell one that I often tell children, but I have told it to adults. But I haven't told it for so long. I've got to remember how I start it now. So it's a story from so long ago. Fish could fly and birds could swim. That's how long ago this story comes from. And on the earth, it was only ever warm. And all the creatures got on with each other. There were no humans, it was just creatures, and they all got on, and they all sort of understood the same language, and everything was good. One day, the earth tilted on its axis, and things began to change. This white stuff began to fall out of the sky, and the creatures at first thought it were feathers, but it wasn't. It was snow. It's the first time it had ever snowed on Earth, and it just kept falling out of the sky. And to start with, well, the creatures thought it was a wonderful thing, and they were trying to bite it and roll in it and play with it. But after a while, they began to get so cold, and the snow just continued to fall and fall and fall until it covered all the tiny creatures, all the mice and the voles and what have we. And they skedaddled up onto the shoulders of the rabbits and the hares and such creatures. But still it snowed, and it got deeper and deeper and deeper, and they were getting colder and colder and colder. And it began to cover the hares and the rabbits. That's how deep it was. And the creatures thought, we have to do something about this. So they all gathered in a clearing in the wood, and they began to discuss amongst themselves what they could do. And they thought, well, we'll freeze to death. We need to stop this snow, this white stuff. Well, I don't think they even called it snow then. They didn't know they have the name for it, but they wanted to stop this. And they thought, well, what? Someone will have to go to the sky spirit, they thought. So Bear said, let's send Skunk. Oh, no. All the creatures said, he's got a stripe from the tip of his nose to the tip of his tail. He won't know if he's going this way or this way. And besides, if he blows off, Boy, does it whiff. Oh yeah, they thought. Hedgehog suggested, why don't we send Owl? Well, that's a good idea, they thought. And then one of the creatures said, yeah, but Owl, he's wise, but he likes to sleep for virtually all the day. Oh, yes. Yes. Then Bear again said, let's send Fox. He's fleet of foot. No, the creature said, we love Fox, but he'll be chasing butterflies, and then he'll chase a leaf that's blowing past, and then he'll forget what even journey he's on. He'll just forget. Oh, yeah, they thought. Yeah, well, as they stood trying to work out what to do, the snow continued to fall, and they got colder and colder and colder, and they were becoming a bit desperate. But there was a bird at the top of a tree listening to all this, the most magnificent bird that you ever did see, with all the beautiful colours through its plumage. Just, it was beautiful, and it was known as Rainbow Crow. And it flew down to where the creatures were, and it said, I will go on that journey. And with one voice, all the creatures said, of course, Rainbow Crow, you're perfect for this, of course. And with that, Rainbow Crow said farewell to his friends, and off he flew on that long, long, long journey. Well, the first day he flew beyond the clouds, and still on he had to go. The second day he flew beyond the moon, and on he had to go. The third day he flew beyond the stars, until eventually he came to the place where the Sky Spirit was. But the Sky Spirit was busy doing whatever Sky Spirits do. So the crow just sat there and he sang his beautiful, beautiful song. He was singing and singing, and then the Sky Spirit heard this song. He thought, that's a magnificent song. And he came to where Rainbow Crow was, and he saw him, and he said, oh, not only do you sing beautifully, but look at you, you are magnificent. Tell me, why have you come to see me? And Rainbow Crow said, well, it's like this. On Earth, there is all this white stuff falling from the sky, and we are so cold. Oh, that will be snow, said the Sky Spirit. Well, can you make the snow go away? Said Rainbow Crow. I'm afraid I don't have that power, said Sky Spirit. Only the Snow Spirit has that power. But I can give you a gift that will help you. And with that, Sky Spirit took a branch and he put it into the flaming sun, and he lit that branch. And he gave it to Crow and he said, take this. And Crow took it into his beak. And he began his journey back to Earth, and on he flew. Well, the first day that he flew, the stick burned a bit shorter, and that smoke curled off and went down his back, and it blackened all of his tail feathers with soot. On he flew. The second day, the stick burnt even shorter, and the smoke curled off and went all over his body until all of his feathers were covered in soot. The third day he flew on, and the stick burnt shorter still, and when the smoke curled off, it went down his throat. And when he tried to call out, the only noise that he could make was, ah, ah. Soon he saw the earth. It was a ball of white. His friends were nowhere to be seen. So he flew around and around and around until there was a clearing in the snow, and then all his creatures, all his friends, the creatures, came out to greet him. And he said, gather sticks, gather sticks. And all the creatures went off here, there and everywhere, and they all gathered sticks, and they lit a fire, a huge fire. Well, all the creatures went around this fire to warm, for they were perished through. None of the creatures really noticed Crow. They were so desperate to get warm, they paid him no real attention. In fact, they ignored him completely. And Crow eventually took himself back up that tree, and that's where he stayed. And the creatures thought no more of him. And Crow stayed up there for quite some time, and he began to feel lonely, and he began to feel sad, and he began to cry. Just then, the Snow Spirit came and removed all the snow for that season. And then his sobbing could be heard high up where Sky Spirit was. And Sky Spirit heard him and came down to earth to see him. And he said, Crow, why are you crying? And he said, look at me. I look so different. I'm not the same. No one recognizes me. I'm so different. And when I sing, the only noise that can come out is, ah, ah. Sky Spirit chuckled to himself. Crow, I've given you the best gift of all. What's that? Said Crow. He said, soon the two-legged creatures will walk the earth. They won't want you for your meat, for you are too smoky. They won't want you for your feathers, for their headdress and their body adornment. And they won't want to put you in a cage for your song either. How is that good? Look at me. I look so different. I sound different. I am no longer the same. Crow. And put it into the sunlight. And Crow lifted up a wing and he put it into the sunlight, and suddenly, well, not hundreds, it was thousands of tiny iridescent rainbows just appeared all over his black feathers. He looked over his body in the sunlight. He was covered in beautiful iridescent rainbows everywhere. He realised that he was beautiful. He realised that his song was unique. He flew down and joined his other friends. And they asked who he was. And only then, when they listened to his story, did they realise who he was. They realised all that he had given up to bring fire back to earth for them, to keep them warm. And of course, after that, he was well looked after. And that's the story of Rainbow Crow. Thank you.
Thank you, Shane. A lovely start. Eamon, can you hear us yet? Oh, but you're on mute, so I can't hear you.
Yes, can you hear me?
We can hear you. Fantastic. Life is wonderful. Big round of, well, first of all, a round of applause for Shane for that story. And then, yeah, I mean, you know, when Eamon's arrival becomes more important than the story, we're in trouble. So there's, but you know, there's a kind of equal sort of importance to that. It's a fantastic story to start us off with, Shane. Now, for Eamon's benefit, the order is Shane, who he's done and been and gone. Emma, the Norfolk dumpling, who's turning up at any second. Well, she's here, but I will pass the stage over. Then Colin. Oh, when we haven't the faintest idea what Colin's going to do, because it's always a surprise, always delightfully a surprise. And then we go to Eamon, and then we see where we are, basically. So, Emma Brooks, the Norfolk dumpling, and you. This is well practiced, wasn't it? You know, you didn't finish writing this 5 minutes ago or anything like that, did you?
It's a well-versed rhyme. Okay, so in September 1949, the New Yorker printed a short story by Roald Dahl, and it was called The Sound Machine. I've taken that story, I've modernised it slightly, and turned it into a long poem. Enjoy. I'll start by thanking Roald Dahl for this great story of old. This one is called The Sound Machine. I'll try and do it justice for you, Roald. Bob was a geek, open and proud. He'd spend all day on his computer, if only he was allowed. He was 46 years old and lived at home with his mum and Nan. They'd hoped he'd be moved out by now, but that wasn't in his plan. For Bob had an idea for a mobile phone app that he was working really hard on. And if it came to fruition, he'd never have to work again. So he beavered away at his code, lots of zeros and the number 1, which means nothing to me, but to Bob, it was such fun. If you walked into his room, you barely see him through the thick fog of gloom and doom that seemed to surround him. One warm summer's evening, the creak and squeak of his bedroom door made the hairs on his mum's neck stand up straight. His footsteps sounded different, but why? She couldn't be sure. "I've done it, Mum. I've gone and cracked it." She smiled wearily at him. "Oh, son," she sighed. "That's fantastic." She'd been here many times before, and it wouldn't be long before Bob's bedroom door is swung shut again. "I'm going to go out and give it a try," and he lolloped off without a goodbye. So what was the app? I know you're keen. Bob called his app the Sound Machine. It detected all the noises us humans couldn't hear. The note above the note that reaches our ear. Bob believed there was a whole other world out there of subtle harmonies and fierce grinding discords that have yet to be heard. He thought that because a fly had a throat, they must be able to make a note or a bark or a song or even a croak. He knew the sounds were there thanks to Furball, his dog, who responds to a whistle that's silent to us all. So let's join Bob again as he stands in his front garden, looking like a slightly crazed man with his phone in his hand and his eyes wild and wide and a little mad. He opened his app, and for a moment, sound stood still. Everything was quiet. Well, it was until Bob took a step forward and into his ears poured a thick, heavy noise that had never before been heard. He stopped. The noise stopped too. Bob's eyes went wilder, looking everywhere, anywhere, for a clue. What made the noise? He couldn't be sure, but before he could investigate, he heard some more. This noise was different. It was more of a shriek that rose high but was cut off at his peak. He heard it again, then several times more. Bob had no idea what on earth this noise was for. And then he saw her, his next door neighbour, out there in her garden with her annoying mutt, carrying a bunch of roses that she had just cut. He watched, and as she reached out to cut another, he heard the noise again, and he cried out, "Holy Mother, Mary, Mary, over here!" She looked over to Bob, a string bean of a man, waving frantically at her with both of his hands, headphones perched on his greasy head, and her stomach dropped into a pit of dread. "Cut another one, Mary, will you? Please." So Mary did as she was asked, safe knowing her husband was home if she needs. And she watched as he turned even paler than he was before, for he could hear that frightful throaty shriek and he could take no more. "That's enough," he cried. "Please, no more. Every time you cut through one, I hear it cry. A shriek, a high-pitched sound. So please just leave those roses in the ground." She looked at him with his wild and wired eyes, phone in hand, looking like he might cry. She nodded at him and headed back in and triple locked her front door. Bob did not know what to do. He walked through the gate and he heard the first noise again and realised it was the grass under his feet. He hopped onto the path and started to laugh, a hysterical howl mixed with defeat. He wondered what he could do with his new superpower, and he stood there in his front garden, pondering for several hours. For he was thinking of other living things and wondered too if they would make such a din, like a field of wheat all yellow and alive, when all of a sudden a mower arrives and there's 500 wheat plants screaming together and another 500 2 seconds later. What would that noise be like? Bob decided to cut bread out of his life. But what about potatoes and carrots and grapes and onions and tomatoes and mushrooms and dates? And what about apples? No, they're all right. They fall off the tree naturally when they are ripe. And still he stood by his front gate, his future food up for debate, when his mum popped out with her worried smile and asked him if he'd be a while. And he looked at her with fresh new eyes and took his headphones off and followed her inside. But poor Bob could not get the shrieking noise out of his head, so before he could go to bed, he went outside and down to the shed, where he picked up the smallest axe, the biggest he could lift, and headed off, axe on shoulder, phone in his fist. He got to a tree and stood underneath. He took a deep breath in through his teeth, popped his headphones on, turned on the app, and the axe he swung. As it hit the wood and stuck him deep, the noise Bob heard made him weep. It was a new noise, a harsh, noteless, enormous noise, not short and shrieky like the rose, but long, growling, low, pitched, drawn-out sob. And that was it for Bob. He threw the axe onto the ground, ran home for a boundage, which he then wound round and round the trunk of the tree. "I'm sorry," he whispered, "I'm so sorry." And then he realised something. He hadn't pressed record. That was the whole reason he'd gone to the tree for. He looked at the tree, then looked at his app, then looked at the tree, then looked at his axe. He looked back at the tree, apologetically. This time he pressed the button, but at this precise time, something else happened. A large branch from the top of the tree creaked and groaned and set itself free. It fell all the way from the top to the bottom, smacked Bob on the head, and all was forgotten. The phone was broken, as well as Bob's head, and the sound machine app was well and truly dead. For nature does not like you to hear what is known to be their celebratory cheer. It was not a shriek, as Bob had thunk, but a celebration of their life lived, their mission completed, a slam dunk. And Bob, poor Bob, he was hit on the head hard and woke up thinking he was quite the card. So don't worry about him, Bob is fine. He's got lovers and job offers forming a line. But I feel the message here is clear. We should only listen to things we are meant to hear. Thank you.
Very good.
Oh, Emma, you never fail to surprise. Oh, love it, love it. Right. Oh dear. Well, Colin, it's when Emma does something, as you know, and it's something that we've never heard. It's always something we've never heard before, and you kind of, think, I'm glad I'm not following her. So, I apologise in advance, Colin. And,
that was excellent. Love that, Emma. Really, really good. I haven't heard you do your stuff before. That's absolutely first class. Love that. Very clever. Okay, what am I going to do to follow that then? I'm going to do a song far more serious. Going all serious on you. Probably shouldn't have done, but anyway, I'm committed now. Here we go. It's a wee song called Wishbone. By the way, my CD's out this week, John. Website is up and running, and it's called A Kind of Love Song. Can be purchased on the website, or you can download it if you wish. You can download track by track if you wish. This song
before you start, Colin, do you want to do a launch on the cafe? We'll give you a whole program to do a launch. We'll talk about that. Go for it.
Okay, this song's not on the CD, by the way. I'm staying on piste here tonight for this song. It's called Wishbone. Think maybe I was born a mismatch to my fate. Wish I'd seized the moment before it got too late. Now the seeds are blown away, soil's turned to dust. How soon the boom times fade. Now I'm bust. Every moment somewhere a rainbow captivates the earth. I wish I'd seen the colors for what they were really worth. Now the sky is overcast and all the gold is spent. Wish I knew where all the riches went. wish I had a wishbone so I could make a wish. I'd wish for birdsong in the woods and rivers full of fish. I'd wish the rain to fall on the desert and the plain, and then you and I would fall in love again. I heard you never miss what is given to a friend. I wish I'd taken less, what I thought would never end. The ocean is not boundless, unlike my arrogance. I always thought I'd get a second chance. They say you cannot see forest for the trees. I wish I'd taken more care, small things like the bees. Now the spring is silent, no buzz of wings or song. Wish I could write all the things I'd done wrong. I wish I had a wishbone so I could make a wish. I'd wish for birdsong in the woods and rivers full of fish. I'd wish the rain to fall on the desert and the plain, and that you and I would fall in love again. The road is long and turning, it only goes one way. Wish I could go back in time to some distant summer day before everything was tainted by avaricious men. We could make a new beginning in Eden. I'd strive for peace, not plenty. You would provide for all my needs. Oh, I wish I'd cultivated more roses and less weeds. Now the garden is neglected, it's all been slashed and burned. Wish I didn't have to live while I learned. I wish I had a wishbone so I could make a wish. I'd wish for birdsong in the woods and rivers full of fish. I'd wish the rain to fall on the desert and the plain, and then you and I would fall in love again, and then you and I would fall in love again. I wish you and I would fall in love again.
Oh, Colin, as always. As always. Personally, I wish I could be sitting in a bar in Northern Ireland with you playing in the corner and just seeing you live, mate.
Closer than you think, John. Closer than you think. We will make that happen.
Ah.
Shane's running a bus trip.
Right. Right. Oh God. Well, we're going to stay. We're going to stay on that side of the Irish Sea, and I'm reliably informed that we are about to have wolves. Actually, that's one bit I miss about my place in. Well, there's loads I miss about my place in Romania, but I've never seen a wolf yet. But I can hear them at night. For the wolf howls, and then every dog in about a 2-mile radius starts barking. So if there's a wolf around, there's a wolf howling, I stand no chance of getting any sleep that night. And I don't really want it. I just listen to the sounds. But Eamon, are you ready for us? We're ready for you. But you've gone silent on us. What you pressed? Oh, that's good.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, good. You've got a nice yellow strip around you. Okay, over to you, Eamon. It's yours.
Okay, sorry, just get rid of this technology here.
Yeah, well,
okay, I'm ready. So Whenever I heard about tonight's theme, the theme of the session was going to be about nature, I had to have a wee lie down and think about it. Think about that word. And as I was thinking about it, I went into some sort of a reverie. My mind sort of wandered and meandered, and my mind took me into a forest. And it was a forest I know well, and a forest that I miss very much because I haven't been able to get to it. And there in my mind, thinking about this forest, a poem came to me, a poem by a wonderful storyteller and poet, a guy called Kevin McManus, who lives in County Leitrim. And it's from a collection of his poems called Songs of Better Days. It was a collection of poems, and this one is called There is Magic and Beauty Around Us. There is magic and beauty that surrounds us. If we stop to listen, if we stop to stare, but our perceptions have been blunted, our emotions have been stunted, drowned out by modernity and our focus on eternity. There is a magic and a beauty that surrounds us. It floats around us and abides in us. So now for the story. It's called A Wolf Story. It's in a collection by a wonderful woman. It was published in 1887. And the wonderful woman was Lady Francesca Speranza Wilde, the mother of Oscar Wilde. But she should be well known for much more than that. I admire her as a woman who collected stories from the old people in the west of Ireland. But she was a great writer herself, and she was a strong, independent Irish woman in her own right. So long ago in Ireland, long ago in Ireland, the land was covered with great forests of diverse native trees. Each had their own status and each had their own purpose. There was birch, hawthorn, yew, elder, ash, hazel, holly, fir, and of course, the king, the oak. But those forests are all gone, long gone now. Just tiny fragments remain. Also, long ago, in the time of the Virgin Queen Elizabeth, the strangers came to Ireland and they began to chop down the forests. But it was known at that time that the forests were filled with wolves, as many wolves as there were people. In fact, the land was known to the stranger as Wolfland. And the wolves, like the priests and the rapparees, were hunted down by the strangers out of the strangers' fear, anger, entitlement, and for financial reward. In those days, there were stories told of fierce and dangerous wolf people who protected the people of Ireland. They were well loved, unlike those werewolves of Europe. So this story is about one such a young man who lived in Ireland at that time. His name was Connor. Now he had a herd of cows and they were great cows. He loved them. He looked after them. He cared for them. But one morning he woke up and he realized that two of them were missing. Not wanting to lose them, he gathered himself together and went out to find those cows, those missing cows. But all he had with him was a blackthorn stick to protect himself, and foolishly, little else. Now, for a long time and a long way, he wandered around through the forest looking for the cows. Then he came to a bleak and desolated place without any sign of the cows, but there were signs of wolf tracks. And Connor realized he was lost. It was getting dark. The night drew its dark cloak across the sky, hiding the light of the moon. He looked about, and in the not too far distance, there was a light shining. And he approached where the light was and saw that it came from a small, low cabin. Connor went up to the cabin and knocked on the door. It was quickly opened by an old man who was tall, thin, with a long face, grey hair, sharp, dark eyes, and teeth that were long and sharp. "Come in," he said. "Come in. You are most welcome. We've been waiting for you. Come in." And there, as he came into the house, that small little house, he saw an old woman beside the fire, sitting at the hearth. And the old woman was just like the old man. She was stirring a pot, a large pot that sat on the fire, and from that pot he could hear bubbling, and he could smell the enticing fragrance of cooking meat, herbs, vegetables. It was a rich beef stew. The old woman looked at him as Connor looked into the fire and pretended not to see her. But the old woman smiled at him and said, "You are very welcome. You must join us for dinner. Come on, sit at the table." Well, this he did, but Connor felt uncomfortable as she and her husband stared at him strangely. But he was tired and he was hungry and it was very late and he was getting sleepy. But then there was a sharp knock at the door and a young dark wolf came into the cabin. A dark wolf that went into a side room, and within a matter of moments, a young man came out of that room, a young man with long dark hair. He looked at Connor and said, "We are pleased you have come. You are going to join us for dinner, aren't you?" Connor was getting more uncomfortable, but before another word was said, there came another knock at the door, and then came in another wolf, much larger and darker than the young one. He came in and again went into the side room, and within a short time, a tall young man with dark hair came out. He came over to the table, sat down, looked at Connor, but said nothing. Then the old man said to Connor, "This is our eldest son. So now we're all together. Tell us why you are here. We live alone and we don't like having strangers or perhaps spies come into our place." And Connor told them about his missing cows and asked if they knew of their whereabouts. And as he spoke, they laughed and smiled at each other, smiling with their long, sharp teeth and their dark, dark eyes. Connor felt angry and fearful, and he clutched at his hawthorn stick, hoping that, well, foolishly hoping that he might be able to fight his way out if they attacked him. And in anger and fear, he spoke out, "Do not mock me with your laughter, but let me leave here without harm." But the eldest of the two sons spoke to him gently. "Wait, Connor, we know you. Yes, we are fierce, and yes, some people think we are evil, but we never forget a kindness. Do you remember some years ago, you came across a poor little wolf cub, sorely wounded by a large, sharp thorn stuck in its side, and you cared for it. You cleaned its wounds. You made sure it had water, and you left it in peace." "Yes," said Connor, "I remember. I remember well that wolf, that cub, because it licked my hand in gratitude. And the eldest son spoke up with the same gratitude. That was me. Now join us for supper. And have no fear. A kind deed done is never lost. Blessings are won by a good deed done. Well, late into the night, they feasted well and they drank deeply. And they had a merry time. Then Connor fell into a deep, warm and peaceful sleep. When he woke, he was back home. He was lying in his garden. He was lying on the wet grass, the dew, the morning dew, and the sun in his eyes, and his head very sore from all the alcohol. When he got up, he wondered, was it all a dream? And then he saw walking up the lane 3 very strange but beautiful cows. At first, he thought they might have been strays and maybe from another farm, so he went towards them to shoo them away. But as he went towards them, he saw behind them was a large, dark, black wolf. Now, when the wolf saw Connor, it stared at him for a long moment. And then Connor and the wolf nodded to each other, mutually acknowledging their debt was paid. And then the wolf ran off. The cows gave great milk and Connor prospered. But even though he lived many times, he never found a wolf again. And he never found that cottage. And as he grew old, he saw the deaths of too many humans and too many wolves. And he mourned both man and wolf in their passing. And that is the end of the story of Connor and the Wolves.
Amen. Whenever I listen to you, I sort of go, I just drift into whichever period you're talking about. You know, I was in that forest. I was sitting at that table. Oh, my goodness gracious me. What a voice. Now, I think another round of applause, I think, actually. That's brilliant. Now, I'm going to do a little something, but after a bit, has anyone else got a story that they would like to do around the theme? Norman, have you got one, or you? Right, Norman, you have one, right? So I'll go on, and then then we'll have Norman, and anyone I've forgotten, just put your hand up, and I've done this before, but it's about a couple of years ago now. I was collecting around where my house is in Transylvania, and I collected stories from, there was an 82-year-old guy and a guy probably in his 60s, 70s, and then someone else, and I sort of did put a mashup of everything because I had this idea that I could collect folk tales, and what I got was anecdotal tales with sort of mystical creatures in them and figures. So there was this sort of cross. It was almost like sort of reading sort of 18th century stuff from the English peasantry or something, where, you know, it was just not, there wasn't any difference between consensus reality and what we deal with. There's a couple of things that are quite important. One, there's a lake where I live, but it's an artificial lake that was put there in the 70s. It's beautiful. It's called the Sea in the Mountains. There's also a character in Romanian or Transylvanian folklore called Mamu Paduri, and she's a bit like She's a bit like a woman version of a green man, except she's not nice. You know, you don't want to mess. Well, she's okay if you don't mess with her forest. She's fine. Don't muck about with her forest, you know, and she won't muck about with you. She also has daughters called the Fatapadure and Fatapadure, and they're like sirens, you know. The young men walk in the forest with their swords and their axes to do a bit of harm to the forest, you know. They'll just they're beautiful, you know, and those young men never come out again, and the trees stay there. And you know, we could do with it right now, but anyway, this is a mashup of the whole thing. Before the lake, before the road, before we had to open the windows to stop them shattering when they fired those cannons left over from the days of the Austro-Hungarian Empire at the Russians who looted all the food and livestock from the village and mined the roads, and the people took shelter in the forest. We worked for the SAS. The SAS is like a squire. We were 12 years old, went to school for 4 hours a week. Our parents had hired us out for the year. We lived in long wooden cabins, all us boys. One had the power of prophecy. He tried to tell the SAS no good would come from making us work on festival days, especially those dedicated to Saint Ilya, who creates storms and rains down fires on those who displease him. The boy with the power told the SAS if he forced them to work on the holiday, there would be a great storm and worse. But the SAS was German and knew nothing of such things. Meanwhile, one of the old workers called on the saint to bring down fire on the 3 hayricks, the SAS's 3 hayricks. No sooner had he uttered the words when dark clouds gathered above them and a bolt of lightning set fire to the first hayrick. Still, the SAS forced them to work until another bolt of lightning lit up the sky and the second hayrick burst into flames. Only then did the SAS give in and grant them their holiday. As for the boy with the power of prophecy, the power to predict the future, he was given special treatment and lived well on the farm. Later in life, he predicted the coming of the lake when he saw a pond full of frogs, and the coming of tractors pulling trees from the forest when he talked of carts being pulled by chariots of fire. At 15, I worked in the forest. There were no chainsaws back then, just long 2-handled saws, one of us lads on each end. And if we were lucky, we'd be working near a pool in the roots of a huge tree, the Zenala. Beautiful fairies would come to the pool to swim, and they'd sing the most beautiful songs and take off all their clothes to bathe. Us lads would hide behind the trees and watch in wonder. Sometimes we'd take their clothes and they'd cry. That was in the daylight. Nighttime was a different matter. We'd all sleep in the middle of the forest in a big hut made of moss and branches with tree bark tiles for roof. We were warned if Mamu Paduri spoke to us, we must not answer or she would steal our voices. One night we heard her calling. No one answered. I heard the door open. I was terrified. I'd heard stories of the hag all my life. I kept my eyes tight shut as she moved from bunk to bunk. I felt a tug at my feet. Still, no one spoke or even stirred. After what seemed to be an age, we heard the door open and close. Outside, there was a blood-curdling scream, and she was gone. The forest gave us almost everything we needed, but it was full of danger. Even if we knew it well, it took my uncle eventually. He was a carpenter who at the end of the winter, when the bears were still asleep but the wolves were lean and hungry, he went to the forest in search of long straight trees to cut. Late in the day, he heard a sound he did not recognize. Climbing to the top of a hill, he looked down the valley and there was a pack of wolves, more numerous than a flock of sheep. He turned on his heels and ran, but the pack caught wind of him and he gave chase. Losing ground to the pack, he climbed a tree. They bayed around the base for 3 days while he clung on for dear life in freezing temperatures. 2 hunters passing by on a nearby track heard him tapping his axe on the tree, glimpsed him, fired their guns to frighten off the wolves and rescued him. For the rest of his life, he woke up screaming from his dreams every night before they got the better of him and his heart burst. Now, I sit in my room and listen to young men talking of close encounters with bears and the ways of wolves. Yeah.
Fantastic, John.
Thank you.
Magic.
Yeah, I need to finish the book. I need to get back out there. And I just trouble is, I record it all in Romanian, and then I get it translated, and then I have to work on it. So it's all a bit it's a bit of a long process. I thought I'd get the book written in about 18 months. It's probably going to take 10 years, I think. But Norman, we'll go across to Canada. Let's cross the Atlantic. Let's go to Canada.
I'm still stuck with the wolves.
Yeah, well, I had to do that. Well, with Eamon going on the walls, I kind of had to do that piece. I'm sorry.
Okay, of course. Oh, Lord. How much time do I have?
Piece of string, you know, I mean, like, I ain't going anywhere. I'll tell
Okay.
Early when we're finished, he can turn us off.
Okay, John, I had a story in mind, and but what you just said had reminded me of something that happened to me in the Ottawa Valley. And while I would like to tell the story that I have, I'll give what happened to me as in short, succinct manner as I can, and then do the story. And I was in fact, it happened this time of year. I was a young lad and about 15 or thereabouts, walking along a snow-covered landscape to my house, which was left in the middle of the countryside in the Ottawa Valley on Black Bay Road. And from the direction of the house, very clearly and distinctly, I heard the sound that was so clear. And it started off as a low basso profundo, sounding very much, and I'll try and give it a bit. It went off, to a high soprano. It seemed to be coming from the woods back of the house. And I wasn't frightened, I was curious. And as I walked along down the road and up the driveway, I heard that sound several times. I won't try and repeat it. And as I came up to the house, I met my brother Robert coming out from the porch, and it sounded once more. And I asked him, "Did you hear that sound? Low basso profundo up to a high pitched soprano scream, exactly the way I've heard it 3 times before." He said, "Do you hear that?" And he said, "Yes, I heard that. You want to go and find out what it is?" He said, "No." And I went and kept on going through the snow and into the woods, and I listened and heard nothing. I never heard it again, but I've never forgotten it. And that's the first story, and a true one, and a factual one. And once upon a time, there was an old woman who lived in the forest with a young girl, and the old woman was a healer. She was not just a healer of the people in the village nearby, but a healer of the animals. And she helped them with their wounds and their illnesses and their sicknesses, gathering with the herbs that she gathered from the forest. And the young girl was her assistant. And though the young girl was blind, her senses of sight, smell, and touch allowed her to wander through the forest and to find the herbs and the roots and the berries that the old woman used in her healing, and the wounded animals as well, and the birds. But the old woman wanted to cure the young girl's blindness, and she had everything she needed. Everything except one vital ingredient, a piece of the sky. Now, one day, there were 3 birds, an eagle, a falcon, and a sparrow, had been healed of their wounds, and so they're ready to leave. And they wanted to say thank you and give thanks to the old woman. "Is there anything we can give you, old woman?" And she said, nothing, nothing for me. But I would love to have a piece of the sky up, up high. And that is what I need to cure the young girl's blindness. Ah, said the eagle, I am strong, and I will bring back a piece of the sky. And the eagle flew through the window and came back with nothing. He could not make it. As Falcon said, I am swift. I will reach the sky as well. I can do it. But this falcon too came back with nothing. And traditionally, it's the weakest that comes back and successful. But I must tell you, even the sparrow came back with nothing. And so the three birds were sad, saying, it is impossible to do what you ask of us, old woman. But then the young girl spoke up and she said, there is a way. What one cannot do, three can. And they understood her. And so the falcon nested among the feathers of the back of the eagle, and the sparrow upon the back of the feathers of the falcon. And with his great strength, the eagle went flying up into the sky, until at last the eagle cried out, I can go no further, my strength is done. And so swift as an arrow, the falcon went flying straight up into the sky, swifter than an arrow, until at last the falcon said, my little friend, it is up to you, my swiftness is spent. And so the sparrow began to fly up higher than it had ever been before. It was so cold that the frost formed, blinding it, formed over its eyes, blinding it, until at last it wondered, where am I flying? Is there nothing that I will find? Until at last it struck against something, and it pecked at it with its beak, and something came off. And then it flew down, 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 until the frost melted from its eyes, and it could see the cottage in the forest, and it flew through the open window, and there the old woman was ready with a bowl of steaming herbs, and the sparrow dropped the something into the bowl, and a sweet scent filled the air. The old woman gave the bowl to the young girl, and she drank from it. And she said, I can see light and dark. And then she took another drink. I can see colors. And then the third and final time she drank from the bowl, draining it, and said, I can see my friends. And so the young girl sight was given to her as a gift of the old woman and the three birds. And the birds are gone, the old woman is gone, but this story remains. The story of how long ago a new star, what this little sparrow pecked from the sky, was born. Thank you.
Ooh. Whoa. And I know David Thompson wanted to do something, but he was here and then he kind of disappeared. So there's it happens in the world, in this virtual world. We lose people on the road. We pick them up, they magically appear in front of us further down the road. Unfortunately, didn't tonight. Has everyone who wanted to do a nature story done a nature story tonight? Fantastic. Now, yeah, I've just got to finish one. I'm going to speak about the forthcoming program, because it's a very important week on the World Storytelling Cafe. We have this weekend, apart from all else, Sunday is World. Hold on. Oh, hi, David. You couldn't get back in. If you try now, Jackie's still here, so I'll try. I'll get Ali to let you back in. Right, Ali, could you let David in if he comes in? Are you trying to get back in? You leave it till another week, did you say? You're trying now. So I'll message Ali. Hold on, everybody. Do not go away. We have right. I'm just going to message Ali. To Ali, could you let David in if he comes, if he tries in? What Storytelling Cafe? It's in the middle of another message, but what? Could you let David Thompson in, please? Right, and while we're waiting for that to happen, okay, coming up in the for next, well, tomorrow we have, of course, our young under 18 tellers, which is always something that cheers me up and makes me incredibly optimistic for the future. Then on Friday, we've kind of got me telling stories for children, which I apologize for, but you know, I have to remember occasionally that I don't just curate this thing. I do tell the odd story or two. And then Saturday is World Storytelling Day, so we've got I mean, put your name down and I'll try and get through as many people. I think that'll be another long one, as many people as possible. That's 6 o'clock on the usual time, 6 o'clock on Saturday. Then how are you doing there, David? Is Ali letting you on? Are you still in the waiting room? Right, Ali. Oh, hold on, we'll do it. Right. Anyway, Sunday. I'm losing track. I'm trying to work two devices here. And David knows I have enough trouble working one device. Sunday is our worldwide story round in conjunction with Get a Word in Esways. But I think we're going to go on longer than just the Mike Rust, because you know, about an hour and a half is Mike's limit. So, but we're not limiting the program. We're just carrying on forever. So I might end up comparing that halfway through. Just turn up. We'll just get through as many people as possible that day. What Mike, I'll just make sure you get on. Anyone who hasn't gone through Mike Rust bit will get on my bit. And then it just carries on. And Monday, I'd love as many of you people there. We will just talk about, because it's our 1 year anniversary. We've been running, we started on about March 22nd, March 23rd last year. So so that's partly why it's a long program on Sunday as our anniversary program. Monday, I just want to look at what it's meant to people, you know, just, you know, and get as many people on as possible, you know, try and get some people that were with us earlier, and of course have gone their own ways. David's still trying. David, I'm going to cut you off, and I'm going to message Ali directly on WhatsApp. Okay. And if I see you, I see you. If not, I'll see you tomorrow night for with the youngsters, and we'll make sure whatever you were going to do today, you do over the weekend with Jackie. Okay. Yeah, we'll try. We'll try. I'm trying to get you. I'm trying desperately to get you on. But we will work on this day. But I'll see you for now. Hopefully, I'll see you on this. Right. Hold on. Let's go. Goodness gracious me. Technology. I do hate technology. Well, no, it's done us. Just a sec.
John, I've got a wee story I can tell you just now while you're trying to get David on if you want.
Oh, But we always like a wee story from you, Phil. That's just, you know, we love, you know, if anyone's going to do a time filler, let, let's go for it. Yours, Phil.
All right, okay. This is about what you shouldn't do in nature. I used to run a parcel delivery company, so this is one of my autobiography or antidote stories of life. I think I do a lot of antidote stories in life. So I got this phone call while I was driving my van one day asking me if I transported livestock. And as I had just transported somebody's lost homing pigeon the day before, and it was actually sitting in a wee box beside me, I just naturally said, "Oh yes, I drive livestock." And the person at the other phone says, "It's a snake." "No, sorry, no, there's no way. There is absolutely no way on this earth there is a snake going in my van." But he proceeded. I'm an Aberdonian, typical Scot. He named a sum of money that was just far too big for me to say no. So I gave my instructions of the snake had to be in a secure box. No way it could get out of it, and it could go in my van. Now, I am a farmer's daughter from the northeast of Scotland. I have worked in the transport industry all my life, and I have got the vocabulary that goes with both occupations. So I will refrain from using the vocabulary that was used on the day that I picked up the snake, but I'm sure you've all got a great imagination and will know exactly what I'm saying. As I got handed the snake in a 2-kilo margarine tub with sellotape round the side and a few holes in the top, and I was literally shaking when it was handed into my hands, and my vocabulary was not like this. I do hope that that lovely snake can drive that absolutely filthy van, because if it gets out of that very, very secure box, I, for one, will definitely not to be driving that van. The adjectives that I did use all began with the letter F, and I didn't think I could use it so many times in one sentence. Neither did my customer as his chin hit the floor, but I was very relieved that the money was already in my back pocket.
Oh.
So that was just a little filler for David to come in, who has just joined us.
You're muted, John.
You're on mute, John.
Thank you. That was yeah, well, that's fantastic. Thank you for that fulfilling filler. Oh God, I would have loved to, you know, fly on the wall. Maybe if it was a snake, I don't want to be a fly on the wall. But that's, David, great to have you back in. Yeah. So. And we have your your able assistant, or the double act Jackie is with us. So we have the team. So David, unmute yourself and the floor is yours. Explore nature with us.
Okay. La weekend, midday, was that story, but of that net is Ireland.
Yes, we had a lovely collaboration, didn't we, David? We got together at the weekend and wrote a story together that combines nature and International Women's Day last week. Okay.
Ole at the local
Orla had long golden hair and eyes as green as emeralds.
Only the better that Ali were the key che alle
She lived in the very south of Ireland, where the grass was as green as her twinkling eyes.
volte ole a ritenevo che tu molto a parte.
One day, Orla went into the woods to collect some mushrooms and berries.
Tu a per a palle olive me
She saw a fox playing a violin. Orla was amazed.
de de da o amo de wo verdade
Then she saw that all the animals in the wood were dancing.
de vi de vade a de algo do a
The hare danced with the rabbit. The deer locked antlers and spun around in time to the music.
vo e a bade
The birds swooped in and out of the branches.
only what to die.
Orla wanted to dance.
Bade a bade da vade da ode only what ode a do de bade a le de mode a the dad.
She spotted a badger shyly watching the others. Orla went over and took him by the paw and led him into the middle of the dance.
The bad God that with me all smile. I looked at the
The badger said, "Thank you very much for coming to dance with me." Orla smiled. "I love dancing," she said.
the all are old but but mother I did but the all am but I will did
Suddenly, the blast of a hunter's horn broke through Fox's melody and shattered the peaceful scene. All the animals panicked and ran off in every direction.
I did no but got I did.
All except Badger. He couldn't run. A voice called out, "Come here, come inside."
But all of the other animals, the old, the leopard only,
It was an old oak tree, ancient and magical. Its trunk opened to let Badger and Orla enter.
they do the old animal, the
They saw that,
but
sorry, David, they saw that all the animals had taken shelter there.
the all animal the but the doesn't become like more.
Fox started to play his violin and the dancing began once more.
There are the low ago, but it will go a little right now. It get over the were where the island.
This happened long, long ago. But if you go to Ireland today, right now in 2021, and you take a walk in the woods way down in the south of Ireland,
Do not at the cover all of the mobility be bad at all the
you might just hear some strange sounds coming from an old oak tree. It might just be Badger and Orla still dancing.
add bad there weather.
What was that, David?
Add bad there weather.
Anybody didn't get the last word. But David, I'm dancing.
David, that was magical. I think the I think you should do a little film for the Irish Tourist Board. It was really magical. Thank you for that, and thank you for your persistence. Having fallen off the virtual highway to crawl back on and join us again. Fantastic. Well, it's been an amazing evening. It's been, thank you, Colin. Thank you, Emma. Eamon seems to have gone somewhere to Eamon land, but thank you, Eamon, if you're listening out on another device. Phil, Shane, Jackie, of course, and David. I mean, it's been wonderful. So could you all give yourselves a big round, a very huge round of applause. And Norman, of course, who I forgot to name check there. I apologise, Norman.
No,
It's St. Patrick's Day, you mean, David, isn't it? Happy St. Patrick's Day.
Oh, it is indeed. Happy St. Patrick's Day. I knew that. I knew there was something I was forgetting. But it's just, I'm kind of, I remember Veronica Chambers, who's a storyteller that we have on occasionally. She took over as a landlady in an Irish pub in Ipswich years ago, and the first day that she had it, she took it over as a bit of a, it was a bit of an emergency, and it was St. Patrick's Day, and to be a new landlady on St. Patrick's Day, it was an Irish pub, was just a bit. So we were running around getting sort of bouncers from all over town, but everyone was employed. There was no one left, and so we got a few people, and it was a brilliant night.
that story I told that weekend in my mind, I'll do that on Wednesday.
You're doing it on for your thing on Wednesday, yeah.
It's
No.
well,
That story that's in your mind. So we're honoured to have had it first, David. Thank you. Right, well, good night, everyone. Ali, we'll let you get some sleep eventually. Thank you for driving the bus for us, and good
thank you,
night,
Andy.
everybody. And
Thanks,
we'll
everyone.
see you over next weekend for the celebrations, and I will have a huge announcement next weekend.
Oh.
Right.
Ooh.
Okay.
Fab night.
Very
fab
well.
night. Fantastic.
Good night, everyone.
Bye.
thanks,
Bye.
John. Thanks, Ali.
Thank you. Thank you, my friends.
Thank you.